This conference will now be recorded.
Call it. Good. And it's probably that MJ and
We're gonna have MJ and Greg on at 3:45. MJ needed a few minutes.
what are the other two callers on that?
Not sure. Nobody's muted, so. Maybe one of them is. Here's a.
Joining us.
I don't have a huge agenda of work session items today, folks, but I think at 3:45, Greg Borzilleri and MJ Lawrence are going to present a discussion that will involve using Main Street as an outdoor dining resource for the months of July and August. It has some appeal. Frankly, there's more questions than answers at this point. It would follow the Creighton Manning traffic redirection that we developed.
No, Craig,
Yes.
he's proposing to go the other way.
South?
Yeah, to head south and close the north lane.
Huh.
Yeah, because that way the lakeside can have their tables and chairs into the traffic lane. That's, yeah, so.
What do we do for the lost parking? That's one of the big questions here.
The what?
We would lose the parking on the.
Well, exactly. That's what I told him. I mean, someplace like at the Golden Arrow, that can be all parking until you get to the restaurant. There's, it's like hit and miss.
Yeah, I thought it would be fair if we all heard the presentation from Greg, because I think it's easy to raise the questions that have to be raised. But before Greg and Mary Jane get on, just wanted to briefly bring you up to date on the Mirror Lake Sidewalk project. Brad, you're probably in the best position to just indicate where we're at, what we expect to happen in a week.
Yeah, what's happening with the sidewalk is we've issued a notice to proceed. We had a pre-construction meeting yesterday. Doing a walkthrough with them on Monday the 18th at 11 o'clock up around the lake. We're going to walk. We're going to explain certain things to us. And then the following week, I believe it will be on Tuesday, because I believe Monday is a holiday, will be the 26th. Is their official start date. I believe that's the 20th. Yeah, the 26th is when they want to start. Their plan is to bring in a subcontractor, which is Raymond. They will be starting up by Harbor Lane, which is where it goes Mirror Lake Drive off onto Victor Herbert. Start right there and work back towards our section, with structures, drainage work, and stuff like that. They will continue for the summer months, and they believe they can be finished with everything about mid-September. So that's where we are with that right now. Monday we'll know more. By Monday they will have a construction schedule that I can send out to everybody. They're revising that today. We'll have it by the end of the week with details on which piece and where they're going to be working. There will be times that they have two crews up there working. They're going to flag around those crews. They'll put up a work zone starting back 1,000 feet each side of the construction project. And then there will be times when they have two construction crews going. Then they will flag around. That's one of my concerns with this one way on Main Street, because we're going to be working on the backside of the lake with flaggers. So anybody trying to scoot around or go back to where they started, trying to come around the lake to get to back Main Street, they will be held up in traffic. So, during portions of the summer. So right now, that's where we are. It doesn't appear that it's going to be too big of a project for them. They sound like a real good contractor to work with. He lives here, so he's going to be easy to get a hold of.
Sounds encouraging.
Yeah, Kabricki Construction told me also that we will be very happy with them. They do a lot of sub stuff for them. So they said that that you will be happy with our contractor that we have ended with. What's up, Art?
I have a question for you. If I heard you right, it's kind of hard to hear. It sounds like they're going to sub out part of this and they're going to work from either end of the project towards the middle.
No, what they're gonna do is start in the town because they have some drainage structures. We have some drainage work also, but I guess their drainage work's pretty easy. So what they are doing is they are going to start on that end and work back this way. The sub's gonna start first, and then like a week or two later, he'll start with his own crew on sidewalk. He's gonna go over that with us.
Okay, so the sub crew is going to be doing drainage and other problems, and then the sidewalk crew will come in behind them.
Yes, and he also has other subs that he's working with on certain things.
Okay,
But yeah, he just, I believe he wants to start on that section just because of the drainage work. And then there's a long stretch that he can tear out in the town where there is no structures, no really anything besides sidewalk work. He feels that if he can get that peeled up and out of there while they're going to do our structures in our section, because we have some pipe that has to go in and some portions of drainage to go under the sidewalk. He's gonna jump onto that later, and then he will have two crews, kind of one working in our section, one laying sidewalk in theirs.
Okay.
I do have a place in Schenectady that I have pictures on my phone right now. I'll send them to everybody tomorrow morning. With one color, kind of sandy, maybe a little bit of pink in it, colored concrete that they used in Schenectady to kind of make the concrete sidewalk look old. We're getting all the details on it. Because, you know, sometimes how it is with pictures, it's hard to, so I kind of wanted to see what they used for tinting on that. I guess the color is throughout. Ivan went and took the pictures for me, so I didn't have to run down. He sent them to me yesterday. They're looking for some other ones close by so we can, but in the colors that we were talking, I haven't really found anybody that's used those colors. A lot of the colors they're using a reddish color and stuff like that. We already know what that looks like. It's too in your face. So
how long before we have to make a decision on colors?
I would imagine that you probably, if they start on that, probably mid-June before we need to have, other than maybe availability, because we can't have the color holding up them being ready to pour concrete.
Okay, so we need to get right on it, is what you're saying, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did that get to the appearance committee, Art, for any consideration? Did you go to that meeting this past week?
Yeah, but what can you tell them? I don't know the colors. I don't know. There isn't anything really to tell them.
Did they see the color chart?
I did not bring that.
Yeah,
I didn't know what ones we could get.
Pretty much
Last
any
time
color.
They thought that they could have certain colors there at the plant, and
Yeah.
bottom line is no, the appearance committee hasn't heard anything more than that we went with cement and we might colorize it.
Okay.
The town's gonna do tan, that's what Jay said today.
Yeah, Jay has been looking at the sandy colored ones. There's one that he pointed out to me called Canvas, and there was one that Brad had pointed out that was similar to the Cambridge color. That was similar to the Canvas color. I think the Canvas might have been just a shade darker.
Yeah, that's.
If we're that close, it doesn't sound like we're going to have a difficult decision.
I guess my next question there would be, is it possible to do a small pour so we can at least see what it looks like when it dries before we commit to the whole thing?
Yeah, I just having two, even if it's even like even a slight variable seems odd to do since it's one lake and one sidewalk around the lake.
I think there, what I got from those charts, Brad, was that it depends on the size of the pour.
Well, yeah, if you look on the chart that I sent out, you'll see that there's the same number on a whole bunch of colors.
Okay,
It'll say just for instance, on one row, it'll say 242, have 3 different names. Like Craig is saying, that depends on how much of the tint you use with how many yard of concrete. So that's gonna have to be watched. You know, it's gonna have to be very closely monitored that if you're sending 6 yard on a truck, that the same amount of tint, whatever color we choose, is in every single load the exact same. But we definitely have to go with something that's an earth tone. You don't want to go with any of the reds or the terracottas because they are very, very bright when you first put them down for quite a few years. Very bright. But I think that's something that kind of blends away. Like I said, I'll send you what I have on here. This color here isn't bad, but it's not. It was more to, I guess, make the sidewalk look aged. It doesn't look great to me on these pictures, but you can tell the contrast between the not being gray because it has granite curving. This is kind of, I guess, a sandy color. That's what it looks like to me. But I'll get those pictures off to you, and then I guess we'll have to go with whatever everybody decides and get them here to pour something.
Be good if we could.
Well, yeah, it's very simple for us to form up something in 6 feet wide by, I don't know.
You're probably going to need to get, depending on the color you pick. I mean,
We're gonna have to do it in a formula that works.
you're going to use the formula, and you're going to have probably at least a yard of material.
Yeah, yeah. But on there, if you look at the color chart, it does tell you like the breakdown on there. So I guess the sandy color, I do think that going with something that kind of complements what pavers are up there now, because they're not being taken out immediately. So it's not a huge difference. I think that with a light color, going with something sandy, or even with like Art, we had said before, it might even blend with the brick on the other side, the red brick instead of the gray. It might even, they don't notice so much till we get that taken out of there also.
And there has been supervisor brought to my attention that the town's understanding was we were doing the entire sidewalk all the way back around to including the north end from Harbor Lane to Main Street, which is not in this particular contract. I think about all of us on the village board are aware of that, but I think we're getting strong encouragement from the town side if we can see our way clear to maybe trying to get that additional section of sidewalk done. Brad pointed out that that does not have the same requirements or installations that we have to do behind the lake. There's a possibility, depending on how quickly this project rolls out and gets done, that we could look at maybe going further. But I think we're going to have to make that judgment down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that, I think I've talked to you before about this. I mean, anywhere we have a back curve and a granite curve already, all it is pull the brick and pour concrete. We could go in any time of the year that it's nice enough, and we could pour some concrete ourselves. That's an option with going further. There is some sections on that end that fell apart really bad this spring. The worst sections for number 1 Main though, over to just before the cottage. After that, it's not so bad. we talked about this before, though, is that what we wanted to do with that? Do we want to pour that in concrete, or were we going to continue whatever we accent Main Street with all the way down past there?
I think before you start pouring cement there, you're going to want to talk to High Peaks Resort and Mirror Lake Inn. If we put granite on Main Street, we go cement in front of their places, I can hear some complaints.
But I think that was my feeling too, Art, that, you know, that once we're firm on the product we're using on Main Street, that, you know, it might well be that the best plan would be to extend that material out to the cottage, and maybe eventually it'll extend down to the town hall, which really is our primary Main Street region. But the project that we've got on the table is one main to the post office. So I think we're all in agreement on what we understand. I hope we're all in agreement and have an understanding on what the current projects have in place. There was some talk, and I suspect with projects getting pulled back with ORDA, I know they were talking about maybe asking us to extend down so that everything down through the front of the high school would be new and finished when the oval's redone. But I suspect with budget issues and the fact that ORDA is pulling back on some of the projects that they had on the table for the Olympic Center, that we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, we also, with that, we're still not totally, I mean, granite came in, they gave us a price better than what we expected. But until we have the final numbers, we don't know if we're even going with granite. We do know we're going to accent some of the brick, which is probably the permacon brick that we liked with the Granitech finish. That's an option. The ends, you know, the main drag being in the granite with the accent of the permacon, and then the permacon extending down this way and I believe that's going to be probably more likely, because I don't believe that you'd be able to ever afford granite.
Yeah,
Whole.
I knew, no, I knew they could stay there. I just wanted to make sure that anybody could, you know, campers coming in or whatever.
I don't know, like, I am all in favor of putting granite from one Main Street to I don't know if we had gone to the Adirondack Church or if we stopped, but I wasn't aware that we were going to go in front of the cottage.
No, we're
And
not.
I understand why, but that's an expensive stretch of, and I don't know, and I think maybe we should have some meters put in along those to help subsidize the cost of that.
Right now, even, you know, we still have to maintain 50% for the staff.
We're getting a little update from Jay.
Is our meeting being bombed?
Yeah, we're getting go meet bombed by the supervisor.
There today about
Jay is actually participating
when we open the town hall.
Oh yeah,
for a little bit anyway.
He's just not on mute.
yeah.
Brad, the other thing you said was that they're projecting to be done with that sidewalk work by mid-September, correct?
Yeah. Well,
That was
to try to do any more than we're doing this year. You know, we could have a rainy summer. Who knows what's coming up?
you're going to try it in the meeting.
Especially since we don't know what the product's going to be in front of the, you know, the two hotels.
So if you want,
It is
so we can
possible
see
they
it.
might pay the extra to have it go to whatever we do on Main Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are my thoughts.
Okay.
We have Mary Jane on. Is Greg on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Greg. Greg, I want to move on to the next segment of the agenda. Greg had approached the village with an idea that I felt was worth having you all listen to, and that is to try to convert Main Street, and I guess this would be number 1 Main, to the post office or the community church. to an outdoor dining area using one of the traffic lanes and diverting diverting the traffic in such a way that there would be room for, I guess, restaurant tables, dining tables, and chairs outside. The idea, given the kind of season that we expect to come into, and maybe trying to do something, Mary Jane, that would be startling to reopen the community, was I thought at least was worth to take the time to have Greg explain it a little bit, and it does appear that at least preliminarily there was some receptivity, some positive reactions to that on the main street, at least initially. Greg, would you like to? You have the floor.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully everybody can hear me, but you know, I looked at different cities and I just emailed Anita and Craig another report from Boston. I saw a report from Seattle saying they're closing 20 miles of street and converting it to pedestrian use only. They do it obviously in New York and Times Square. They're going to do it in Boston shortly. And I think that when the governor is talking about we need to not go to business as normal, we need to reimagine New York, I think this as an experiment just for a couple months, just for July, August, and summer, may be something that could be a pretty cool idea and beneficial to restaurants and shops where normally, you know, with the crisis that we're experiencing, maybe people don't want to go inside. Maybe they're hesitant to go inside. There are going to be restrictions anyway for social distancing inside and at restaurants and at retail spots. So also in anticipation of next year, Main Street being torn up and going one way anyway, this might be a good tie-in to not only reimagine ourselves, but give a chance for restaurants and retail to push it right out onto Main Street and have a brand new look and an innovative way for us to welcome guests to Lake Placid. You know, there's DOT issues, there's liquor law issues, there's parking issues, there's a bunch of different issues that I think we've kind of worked our way through. And I kind of wanted to present this to you guys and see what your thoughts are, because I was surprised when I called the DOT and they told me, and Pat Barnes told me 6 months ago, I would have told you just to go away. But he goes, now with the governor's directive, and you know, he said, whatever you think you need to do, we can work with you to make it happen. There's a bunch of details that have to be ironed out, and we talked about the Lake Placid Business Association providing a small bit of funding to create a barrier between the lane of traffic and the tables and people sitting on the street, which could be accomplished with planters and flower boxes. Lori Fitzgerald mentioned that there's some funding available for supplies for that. The parking obviously is always an issue, but I think with the expanded NBT lot, and I've had some conversations with High Peaks Resort, and I think there's also a chance for a community public partnership where for 2 months the village could either rent or obtain 5 spots here and there, whether it's St. Agnes Church, whether it's Signal Hill, the side of the road, because that's a wide road. Even High Peaks Resort said that they'd be willing to offer up some spots. Maybe we reach out to Subway and Cunningham's and we can get 5 spots in their parking lot. You know, nothing, we're not taking over the whole thing, but.
Hey, Rand, I just saw the message too, that you'll have some testing available tomorrow.
Well, Jay's on the phone. Okay.
That's right at Horse Show.
And I think that the flow the detours can be set up. The DOT guys have told me that they'd be willing to sign everything. I'm sure we can get some video messaging boards to indicate to the public who are traveling in that detours are available and that Main Street is open and the shops are open and stores are open. And I think it could be a positive thing for the region, and it could position ourselves as innovative and forward thinking, and it melds right into our message of come experience Lake Placid, the outdoors, the health, the environment, everything works out well. So I am more than welcome to have you guys throw darts at me and let me know what you think.
Mary Jane, would you contribute Ruth's position on this? I think our trustees should be aware of that.
I'm sorry, I had to stand up for a minute. Our position is we want to do whatever is necessary to support the community and the businesses within the community. We're obviously very concerned, what the summer may look like and what the longevity of those businesses will be, even going into late fall and early spring. We currently have 3 empty store spaces on Main Street, and we see at least 3, if not more, coming. So, in my conversation with Greg was if the support from the Main Street merchants is there, and we understand that it's never going to be 100%, but if the majority feels that it's that they're supportive of it, then we would certainly, market and promote this without a doubt. I do agree with Greg that we do need to think outside the box. I think, as the mayor and Supervisor Rand, we were on a call yesterday, maybe, was it yesterday? Talking about, from all the indicators that we're reading, people are very concerned about cleanliness. It's the top, sanitation, the virus. And so we were talking about the sanitizing stations being strategically placed around the community to show, that we're taking that extra step, as well as we talked about the public bathrooms and we talked about the parking meters. And so I do feel like in regards to that same conversation, weather permitting, I think that the restaurants will do better if they have the opportunity to, to seat outside, which not all Main Street restaurants have that. And I also think that we need to create a different environment than we're used to. I think it needs to be, I don't want to say festive, because that signifies a crowd, but open.
More of an open air.
Open air, and people can move around freely, and you're not like scrunched on the sidewalk. We've all experienced that, and bumper to bumper cars, and I think all of that, we just need to lighten it up. And I think this could certainly serve as an opportunity to do that. And I agree with Greg. There's some challenges that we need to work through. What it would look like, how the loading zones, the deliveries, what about the alcohol? That's, it's going to be hard to have a successful restaurant if you can't have a drink on Main Street. And I do think, which Lori Fitzgerald brought up a very good point, when you're sitting, for instance, I think she used, the Breakfast Club, and you're eating and you're looking around and you see a shop across the street or a retail store next door, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, when I'm done, I'm going to walk over there and check that out. It could definitely serve the more people we can get, moving around on the Main Street in an open environment could help all of, not just restaurants, but the retail stores. But again, I think that we have to be sure that the Main Street is at least a percentage of the merchants and restaurants are excited about it.
I've got a question for either Greg or Mary Jane. Is you're talking about restaurants, we're supposed to think outside the box. What about retail?
It's a good question.
So I've talked to a couple of retail places. Yeah, I talked to Fallen Arch. I've talked to, who else? Oh, we talked to the bookstore. The bookstore was 50-50. The Fallen Arch was all for it. I'm trying to think of other places. Green Goddess, which is a combination retail and restaurant, they're for it. I've reached out to other places, haven't heard back from them, but I think that with the right the right message going in. Sure, it's going to be a lot more work. They're going to have to move product in and out every day, and it may rain, and they maybe want to think about, building a nice, some type of structure that they could leave there for 2 months of the summer. But I think that the opportunity for retail would also be there to display their wares, and we request that they do it tastefully. I know there's a village ordinance against displaying your product, but the beauty of a pandemic or an emergency situation is those rules and regs can be suspended temporarily, and to see how things can change and help out the community and help out the economy. So I think retail will come aboard. Lori messaged us, said that Mike Beglin was pretty positive about it, less negative than she thought he would be. So that's a good thing, and we'll just continue to reach out to people all week. And for the most part, it's been kind of surprising to me that I've had one person that's pushed back against it out of the 10 or 20 people that I talked to. So it's pretty exciting.
And then another question on that would be, would you take over the parking lane and the travel lane, or would you just take over one and just move the parking out?
No, we would take over both parking and travel, so that eliminates all that parking on that side. And I understand that that's an issue.
And they're still in favor.
What's that? They're still in favor. That's what was amazing to me. And I mentioned that. I said no parking on your side and no travel on your side, and they're still for it. Across the street at the NBT lot, I know you guys are expanding that as we speak, and that's why I also brought up the 5 and 10 spots here and there at the church, perhaps, and at High Peaks Resort and at Subway. And
But Greg,
I
don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that we're delivering a clear message. The ones that that Greg has talked to are for it, and that's the Fallen Art. And right, I mean, you've only talked to a handful.
Yeah, I've talked to probably 10 people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, between myself and Lori, we talked to 10 to 15 people. So we haven't had a significant, if any at all, pushback, except for one.
And the one is the
Mark
bookstore?
Galvin.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah Galvin was okay with it, but Mark wasn't. And I don't know if this is a public meeting, but you're always going to get people that are going to be against something. And I think that if the majority and a significant majority of people are in favor of something, that, and you guys deal with this a lot more than I do, except maybe on the Ironman side of things, you're always going to have people that are unhappy with something, but sometimes you have to do things that you're not going to get 100% ever.
Right, I agree. I just don't want to.
No, I don't want to blow any smoke and make people think that it's all, daisies and tulips and everybody's happy.
I think if the open sort of dialogue is if you are transparent with what the actual sort of negative impacts, parking would be an example, and that it's being addressed, being in a creative manner in which you mentioned, a few here, a few there, the MBT lot, and also reaching out to employees to say, hey, we're going to be a little aggressive when it comes to parking. Here's down at the Stewart's lot. I understand it's a little bit of a walk, but that's what we're going to need you to do. I think we're going to address quite a few problems and minimize the anxiety of those sort of spots disappearing.
Will the village shuttle be running this summer?
Pardon?
The trolley? Is that the county or is that the village?
We hope the trolley is going to be operating. Right now, it's not operating, but it's part of the coronavirus, and we don't have any indication yet when public transportation is going to resume in the county. So that's a question that has to be answered, because clearly, if we were going to displace significant parking, we've got to make a connection between where it's displaced to and where we want people to enjoy. And again, budget-wise, July and August are the 2 biggest months of revenue flow for the village. So we have to do a measurement of what that's going to mean from the perspective of the tax rate and their budgets. But overall, if the idea has significant support on the street, and if we're looking for a dramatic new look, fresh look, I think Greg's thought has some merit. I know we've struggled with this, and we're going to continue to struggle with it. But I think we have to look at these as opportunities, and do we put together a team and figure out how we mitigate the changes that have to be put in place and make it a success. Again,
this idea, Mayor, plays into what Ruth's presentation was. What was the first stage? It's the mobilizing the locals.
I'm sorry.
The local kickstart. I can't see anything better that fits the mold of the local kickstart campaign than this particular idea. I understand the logistics are going to take some work, but it just seems to be a very synergistic sort of situation. This idea and Roost's that first phase of the local kickstart. I think it's worthwhile.
Hey, Greg, are you still on?
Yeah, I got kicked off, but I just joined on.
Okay. So what is, there's been a little bit of controversy on which is your direction of travel, northbound only or southbound?
My thought was southbound only because, and I realized that for next year it's flipped around for the construction project. But in my mind, the southbound travel is better because that when that big parking lot across from NBT gets emptied, people would have an option to go up Marcy Road and Hillcrest to get back around to the other side of Main Street. Otherwise, they're going to have to, everybody coming out of that NBT lot is going to have to go all the way to the end of Main Street before they can get anywhere else.
And it works with
I'm more than open to suggestions for flipping it around. It's no big deal.
And it also works with the sidewalk project where the traffic would be going on the opposite side of the sidewalk project on the far side of the lake. So we wouldn't really need to flag that many people. We can almost, I wouldn't say create a one-way around the backside of the lake, but then you can literally go around Mirror Lake and maybe go up Saranac Ave or come out Signal Hill.
Well, also, if you're southbound, then you're pulling into the parking lot. You're on the side of the parking lots, right?
Keep in mind,
Of the
Mirror Lake,
NBT, of the clock,
Yes.
and of the municipal parking lot.
Yes.
Mirror Lake Drive will not be a viable option in July and August, given the construction that is about to open up over there. We're going to be operating with at times with one lane with flaggers and probably at least two different construction crews working at different parts of that around the back of the lake. And that's to get that job done by mid-September. So we have to keep that in mind.
Greg, I know when you're talking about using them as a bypass, I don't understand what difference that would make either direction.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference on the Mirror Lake Drive. There's a number of different bypasses. There's Old Military Road for the extreme through traffic. There's Cummings Road in West Valley for more local. There's Hillcrest Ave for local, and there's around the lake. So there's a bunch of different options for bypassing if people don't want to use Main Street, and if people need to get around the other way. There's, when I was speaking to the DOT guys, they said if we need to, you can install speed bumps on Hillcrest to keep traffic down if you think there's going to be a significant amount of traffic there. And I also mentioned, do we need a speed bump on the Main Street lane? And they said it's a slow enough street that it's not necessary, but if we wanted us to put it in, we could do that. So the safety aspect, I know. So we have to look at safety as well as the convenience and the detour thing. So
I'm sort of in agreement with Brad because we're talking about putting a light at Saranac Avenue and West Valley Road.
Okay, yeah, that's significant there. Yep.
Standard for next summer too. Just my opinion.
And signage can be installed by that light. When people are at that light and stop, they can also see signage, whether it's a VMS board or whether it's permanent signage, to talk about what's happening a half a mile up the road. So that could be helpful as well.
Keep in mind that Craig Manning is already under contract to the village to, and has developed the traffic and traffic diversions plans. That's it's all part of what's in front of the DOT right now, which I think, right. Greg, may be part of why they're able to be as effective moment as they are.
Sure.
That's what I would use. I would use our detour plan that we have for the other project. And most of your deliveries are coming from 73 and 86 on the north end going north. So, you know, I mean, they're heading north. That would be easier for the trucks. Because you come in on 86, you're gonna have to turn, go all the way out to 73, all the way up over, and then back to Main Street for a delivery. It would be easier just to come up and deliver and go out that way and turn back down 73 and get out of it.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, either way, I would defer to the professionals on that, and if the traffic control company has a better suggestion, I would for sure defer to them.
Well, they already have it done for us, so you have a detour plan to present right to the state if you want to go with that.
It's already stamped.
Yeah, that's fine.
Trustees, I'd like to get a reaction from the trustees today as to whether or not you feel that we want to invest in this type of project, and if so, then we need to put together a team to work on it. And I would assume that that team would include representatives from, would certainly include the leadership of Greg and Mary Jane, but also some of the Main Street representation. We haven't heard, I know the Business Association has given somewhat of a favorable nod to this, but I don't know that they represent all of the restaurants. And then the other question is whether we lock up all the parking along the curbside and take it away, or we may find that the restaurants that have interest in doing this, because they are going to have to make an investment also, may not require the entire curb be restricted from parking. So I think
just to jump in, Craig, I think that there's options for parking that we could cut out. The DOT mentioned that we didn't have to be a straight line; it could serpentine. You know, I'm thinking about in front of Midge Park, and I'm thinking about in front of, you know, say NBT and the UFR residents. Not so much, but at least there's different sections where it's not restaurant intensive, where if retail places are not considering using it, the outdoor space, that we could set aside 4 or 5 spots in different sections of Main Street where there would be parking, or at least pull in for curbside pickup at the retail level, and even for unloading and loading the FedEx and UPS trucks. But I also think that we should really encourage them to come in the morning and say, hey, after 10 a.m. or after noon, you know, there's no 18-wheelers, there's no big trucks that can unload and deliver. Or if there are, they're going to have to do it from the Mirror Lake Drive side or from the village parking lot. You know, and it's an inconvenience. It's a huge inconvenience. But when you look at the big picture of this virus, that's a pretty big inconvenience. And hopefully people will be flexible for a couple months and see how it works out.
I think chime in. The only way I would support this is if Main Street came to us and said, this is what we want.
Well,
what would that look like?
Lori Fitzgerald's working on that right now.
Okay, I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to go to every restaurant, every store. It wouldn't take but a day or two. If that's what they really want, come up with a plan, and then I'd be behind it. But for us to put it on them, we tried that with the Main Street renovations, and look where it took us.
I got you. I hear you.
Yeah. In any event, a project like this is going to take a steering committee to come together and pull all the pieces together that are needed. And I can see where, Greg, you would be a key player. Mary Jane, I think Roost would be a huge player here in terms of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of reopening the community. And obviously, the village's people that are affected would be Brad, Billy, and the board we'll certainly provide support if that's the direction folks want it to go. I think it would start with a good strong push of support from the street, because this is going to have some, this is going to take some effort, and if we're going to do it, we need to kick it off right away.
Hey, Craig, I got an email into the ABC board. I haven't heard anything yet, and then I called Dan Steck, and I'll work on those two angles. I mean, without the liquor authority approval, none of
It doesn't work.
Right.
So you're right.
Get that part.
So, well, during the sidewalk discussion, I think it was the BC in particular, and not to call them out as an individual business, but if they were roped off, they were allowed to sell alcohol. And I remember the mayor expressing disappointment. I think it was a sentiment that was unanimous amongst the board. It was just the preference at that particular time was that they didn't do that. But from what the discussion was within the workshop meeting was if the section in front of their restaurant was roped off to a certain extent, then that would be a way to circumvent that. How that works into the overall project, I'm not necessarily sure.
This is a little different because the sidewalk's in between the seating area that's in the parking lane and driving lane.
But it doesn't have to be.
The sidewalk, and then there's the controlled licensed business, 10 feet away or whatever.
Well, I can say just like, yeah, well, Art's saying it doesn't necessarily have to
Must
be.
be adjoining. So we'll see what happens.
You could
I'm
move
sorry to interrupt. I just have to jump off onto another call. So I just wanted to let you know I'm leaving. And whatever, if the Main Street is supportive of moving forward, like Art said, Roost, our organization, will support the effort through communications and marketing, certainly. And Catherine Erickson, our regional marketing manager, will be involved in this. I'm not sure if she's on the line or not. Are you, Catherine? Perhaps not. So just, Greg, we can talk offline and you can let me know next steps. I'm sorry I have to go.
Okay. Yep, I'll reach out to the business association and ask them to poll their members and see what their results are.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Jane.
I have one question, Greg. So in the interest of safety, wouldn't we want to put Jersey barricades up there? And if so, who's going to pay for them?
Jersey wall could work. I'm sure the beautification committee could help dress them up. They're going to want them to look good rather than just having some concrete stuff. But I being Iron Man, we have 10 or 12 Jersey barriers already available that are just sitting there that we could use. And we'll have to check with the DOT what the requirements are for how many they would need. But I can't imagine we would, if we did a combination of Jersey wall and planters filled with stone. I mean, they use planters in Times Square, so I would imagine that would be acceptable for our use. And actually, in my discussions with the DOT, they said planters will be fine as long as they're 18 inches or bigger in width.
We don't have a mass casualty event there.
Yeah.
So I would think that Jersey barricades would be the way that we would have to go. Maybe they're not aesthetically dress them up, but I wouldn't want somebody to drive through a dining experience up there.
Exactly.
That the city of Plattsburgh does this at the City Hall Place. There they use the parking lane adjacent to the sidewalks. The Pepper does it. Iris's does it. Assuming they're still around this year. But I think that's an example. We certainly would expect that we could get the requirements of DOT without much difficulty to allow something like that. And again, I think a large part of this would depend upon how many restaurants on the street actually want to do something like this. But I think it's clear that there's going to be several things. People are going to be a little uneasy about going inside of buildings. We know that already. And I think also we're going to be working with a completely different market of employees this year. Peter, I think you and I were discussing the fact that J1 workers probably are not going to be plentiful which means that there's going to be high competition for, I would guess, local resources. Is that fair, Peter?
Yeah, but the business is not going to be what it used to be. I can guarantee you that. The group
That-
business, wedding business isn't going to exist until September, so we'll see.
And that leads also into making sure they're all aware that this is going to be, it's going to be another area that have to pick up. I mean, that's going to be something that's, it can get, yeah, it's going to be hard to get in there for us to get in there and clean. But I guess if it's out in front of your restaurant, it'll be your responsibility to pick up.
They have to be responsible for their own loss.
Picking garbage up that's being created by a restaurant.
No, I think that's all part of what would have to be worked out. And again, I mean, we all have limited experience with this sort of thing, but you know, I've been over on Church Street a couple times in Burlington, and those restaurants seem to take care of their own stuff, but they also remove a lot of their furniture and stuff. So it's not heavy furniture that stays in place. It's, I would call it summer furniture, something that's movable that they can get off so the cleaning can be done, our normal heavy cleaning. But
Yeah, and actually it turns into their dining room. So it is in their best interest to keep their place clean so customers won't be walking around in filth while they're dining in their experience. So hopefully they'll get that point.
So I think, Greg, maybe a good way to wrap this discussion up for the moment would be that if the village board, and correct me, gentlemen, if I haven't read it right, the village board would participate and would support if we have a strong indication of interest from the street itself.
Perfect.
And I think that's both retail and restaurant. I know they both have different outlooks on their businesses, but I think we would want to, the objective here would be to create an atmosphere where people are going to be on the street more, and hopefully being on the street more would create more business activity for our storefronts.
That sounds good. So my next steps, I'll reach out to the business association to get a poll of their members. And I'll also hopefully hear from the DOT to confirm. The DOT mentioned to me that they need a request letter formally from the village board to start considering it. So, I think it doesn't hurt to send a letter, and that doesn't mean you're committed to the project, but that means you want them to start investigating the approval process. So I don't think it doesn't hurt to send them a message. And I think that once we hear from the business association, I can report back to you guys and we can see what happens from there.
The other piece of this that we can't get ahead of is the coronavirus requirements for reopening. Because right now, restaurants are in, I think, if I remember right, they're in phase 3.
Yeah, the last
which is toward the end of the reopening cycle. So that's roughly, I think Jim said yesterday, about 6 weeks away, assuming that we don't fall off the metrics that we've already met. There's one more to meet, which is testing. And I think yesterday that some of us were indicated that we should be able to meet that within a matter of a few days, and that would start the clock on reopening phase 1 projects, phase 2, and then restaurants in particular in phase 3.
Exactly.
So
and in my proposal is this isn't a fall, all summer thing. This is just a July, August test case. So we have a month and a half to make this happen as it is. And obviously we can't do anything without the reopening, but we can get the plans in place.
We do have the ability to talk directly with the Region 1 director that is Pat Barnes, and also I think we probably could ask Creighton Manning to participate a little bit here. They've already done most of the work.
That would be good. And would you guys consider amending the village ordinance regarding retail displays for those 2 months?
I think those are all things that the board could and would consider.
Yeah, that will help me with my discussions with retail operators.
I would think you'd have to.
Yeah. And again, the issue here is the elephant in the room really is figuring out the parking so that we don't completely cripple the street that way.
Yep, for sure.
So Greg,
Right.
when you speak to people, make sure that you let them know about the parking.
Yeah, well, I definitely do. I come clean with them. I say, hey, we're going to lose all this parking, and here are the options, and here are the things that we can do. And that's what was amazing to me, that they were still optimistic about it. So I'm not pulling any punches. I'm trying to pull my best Cuomo and telling them like it is.
I like that.
Yeah, Greg, is it possible that you could make a list of all the people on Main Street and then just check off for or against, wasn't able to reach, just so we know?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. You got it.
One other thought on that. Years ago, I was thinking it was shot down, but I'd suggest a rotary that went around Mirror Lake. It would just give you a big rotary. I don't know if this would work in this situation or not, or if it would work with the sidewalk project, but just to throw it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep in mind that that this might just be the piece that really makes the Roost marketing plan for reopening Lake Placid have a life.
I think so.
Will do. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening to me. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate that you're listening, and I'm hoping we can make it all happen, and I'll get to work.
Greg, I have no doubt with your masterful ability, it's all going to happen.
Okay. All right.
In any event, Greg, I'll speak with you tomorrow about assembling a steering group and see if we can't give this thing some life.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, take care. Yeah, bye.
Okay, moving on. I think the other piece that I thought we might be able to cover a little bit, and I'm hoping to have us finished up by 5, is a town board meeting later tonight here. Was still under recovery planning, which I think is going to be on our work sessions for the next at least 2 months. And Bill and I, Brad, we've all been in different presentations all week long, and some of us much of last week, trying to understand the state's direction and how things are going to reopen. And it's complicated, but I believe that we're probably only a few days away from understanding what our summer events calendar is going to look like. I know there's a call tomorrow morning at 9:30 with the horse show organizers, so we will find out what the fate of that event is for this year. The Summer Sinfonetta is not happening this year at all, so the band shell, which normally would entertain people in gatherings, will not be used in that capacity. I did speak with Bill Billerman last week and asked him where they were, and they have only about 4 of the normal 8 groups that they would have performing during the summer in Lake Placid. And of the 4, there was one that I think he was concerned about. So they may try to pull off something, but again, a lot of these groups, it depends on the calendar and where they are in terms of travel. So I think we're tending to see. I know there's a discussion on the town board agenda tonight about 4th of July fireworks. I certainly intend to listen in on that meeting and try to find out. I think they're trying to keep the contractor, Young Explosives, on hand for that purpose. Peter, have you heard any more about that?
Nope, not at all.
But,
No fireworks on the 4th of July sounds very un-American to me, so I hope we're not even entertaining the idea.
Well, it's not the fireworks that we have to worry about, it's the gatherings.
Gatherings, yeah. Could ask Mary when she was here.
We'll hand out masks.
So we're
Hand sanitizer.
they're rolling out a restoration plan, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, jump in on this conversation, Bill, because there was a lot of stuff discussed. But Jim McKenna, who is a North Country representative on the on one of the regional groups that's putting regions back together, did indicate that we have 6 of the 7 metrics measurements met that are needed. We're part of the 7-county region, which reaches all the way down into Herkimer County and all the way west into Jefferson County. The 7th metric is to use his terms, we're close. It's testing. Testing in this region is increasing day by day. We got a notice today from Adirondack Medical Center that there's going to be testing available for, actually they're doing the school, the village and town have been invited to participate, and I think we're interested in talking with Brad and Bill. There's high interest in having our people tested. It's voluntary, and I believe it's at no cost, which is all helpful. But testing is part of getting people back to work, and we're hopeful that we can get off the schedule we've been on. And we need to get more of our people out on the street actually working if we're going to get everything done that we normally would have scheduled.
I'm bringing all my guys back Monday. I'm going to separate them into 2 different groups, but I'm bringing everybody back Monday.
Good.
Okay.
That's the only way we can really have this community polished up. Some of the stuff that Roost has asked us to look at, such as painting the lines on Main Street and freshening it up. We can do all of those things, but we need 2 things. We need our people back, and we need weather.
It's snowing.
And right now it's snowing.
Well, before you paint Main Street, you better decide where the center line's going to be, or if there's going to be a center line.
Well, we're just painting crosswalks.
Crosswalks are at the center line, belongs to the state.
I didn't know if you meant you were going to do it by the way you talked.
No, they'd like us to do it, but frankly, there's things the state prefers to do for themselves.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we approach the state and ask them for that once we know what we're doing with this other project, because they will have lining equipment on either side of us in one way or another.
Yeah.
Craig, you mentioned testing. Can Bill or someone that knows what they're doing there would speak to that? I understand if you're a college or a meat packing plant, you test everybody, you're good to go. What do you do in Lake Placid where your industry is people that come in every day or different people? Who you test?
It's going to be PPE. So we're talking about our employees testing them. And there's 2 types of tests. So the first one would be to see if you're positive or negative for COVID at the time that you take the test. The other, and that's a swab that goes in the back of your nose, and it's done that way. The second test is a blood test to see if you've had COVID or not, and if you have the antibodies. So I think everybody's aware of that. Where we stand right now is Jim McKenna's on, as the mayor mentioned, it's called the Regional Control Board. So in the 7-county region that we're in, we need 419 tests per day based on our population. Currently, we're doing about 400 per day, so we're 19 tests short. All first responders and essential workers should be getting those tests. So I think it's finally happening in our region. That's going to help in twofold. That's going to help for the numbers for the tests per day, and it's also going to find out how our people have fared through this pandemic.
So Chief, I just received an email from Dr. Catania. They're holding it at the horse show grounds tomorrow. You just call in to make an appointment. That's for not necessarily. Is that what you were mentioning?
Yes.
A village staff as well.
Yeah. And I've given Brad and Bill the communication from Dr. Catania. It's a high recommendation that you call ahead and schedule an appointment. And I suspect that they're going to have a good turnout. I don't know if that's the only drive-through they're planning or if there'll be others beyond that. I suppose it depends on the number of test kits they've got.
Well, as you guys probably know just from the news, it's going to become a norm So right now, anybody who works in Elderwood will have to be tested twice per week. So these testing sites are going to pop up. There's going to be one that's going to pop up in Elizabethtown. This pop-up one is one that Dr. Catania organized with Matt Scollins, as Jason mentioned with the email that he just received. So, but they're going to become more common, and it's going to come pop up for a day, disappear, pop up for another day and disappear. And it's my opinion that I think we just keep testing our people, because anybody who's out there out and about should be tested to see if they have it.
Yeah.
That way, if we find out there's a positive test, we can isolate that one and trace back.
There's also very high interest in the antibody testing. I've been in communications with one of our hotel owners here in town who actually is part of a large hotel company. And I put him in touch with Adirondack Health. He has some high interest in maybe doing something here that they did in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where they set up a program called Test the Tetons. And you've got like a whole community involved in it. And he has some very interesting contacts that are high up in the testing industry. In fact, probably one of the most influential in the New York Northeast region. That we're trying to sort out whether or not there's something that can be done with his interest using some connections he's got. But antibodies are interesting for a couple of reasons. A couple of stories have come to me, or information, I guess. One was that back in December, there was an Asian team here for about a month. I think they were housed at the Summit Hotel. And Sue Cameron brought it to my attention that it might be interesting to test those hotel people to see if they had developed antibodies to this, because this disease was around in December, even though we didn't recognize it quite that soon. Second to that, Mindy has a girlfriend who's associated with one of the boarding schools and related a story to me of some 22 Chinese students who were being schooled here. They went home at Christmas time for the holidays and came back. And then, of course, they got caught up in the coronavirus stay-at-home program. So the story that was coming to me was that the Chinese families, the parents of these kids, actually chartered a private flight to get them back to China. Both of those suggest that antibodies may exist in some of our people. We don't know, but it would be interesting to find that out. Then you link that up with Adirondack Health, who has a relationship with Trudeau Laboratories. And I guess I don't need to go into what Trudeau's doing, but they're as interested in finding the right cure for this virus as any laboratory in the world. And so it's interesting when you put all the different thoughts together that people from outside see that something could happen here that they had some experience with. As I said, in Jackson Hole, in this case, it happens to be where they have another hotel. So we'll see what happens. I've been following the threads of communications between the hotel owner that brought this to me, the doctor that's engaged with this company that's heavily engaged in testing down in the New York area, and also looking around at how these things might all tie together and be related. Don't know, but Sylvia Getman and Aaron Cooper at AMC, he's their COO, have been actively engaged in conversations. So it is an interesting, and we don't know if it's going to be a benefit or not, but I thought it was worth pursuing.
So going back to what the chief was mentioning, in the email, it just read about testing. I'm reading it right now. Any located drive-through test should come. So swabs are the first option, but if you get a swab, you can get both. Are we encouraging, and maybe you have said this, and there's a lot of information going back and forth, we're encouraging our staff to get both or just the swab? Chief,
I think
the
there's
mayor.
two. One, there's an opportunity tomorrow, and we've been invited to direct our people to it. I know Brad is very anxious, and I suspect Bill has some interest too. I think we ought to encourage our especially our outside people, actually all of our people, and frankly even the boards. And I think Jay is thinking about the same thing for the town.
Okay.
So as Bill said, they look like they're going to be pop-up testing sites from time to time. I think would be some significant value in having the leadership in the community set a direction for people.
Jason,
I'm sure all of us, to some extent, have underlying conditions, whether it's age or hypertension, just from the position itself. So I think we should.
it would be my opinion that I would get both tests, but you would want to get the blood draw test, not the pinprick one. That's 60% ineffective. It's a lot of false.
Yeah, false positives.
The swab and the blood draw, they draw one vial of blood. And I've had 3 of my people tested so far, using the blood to see if they have the antibodies. And actually, the testing site that they used was upstairs from Cafe Rustica, where that dentist's office used to be.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, there's a pop-up place in there. They're testing the state police and family members, and they're doing about 25 tests per day in their blood draw tests. They're testing for antibodies.
Okay. And I know this is more of an administrative function, so maybe this is it's an aside to the mayor in regards to maybe the marketing and also the inviting in and the sort of the calming of the anxiety of the locals. Has Roost or AMC had discussions or with you about creating, I know you said they're possible, but at least putting it in the mindset that we provide this to the general public, much like Art had said, because our primary business is inviting people in. Is there a way to, like, if we kind of institutionalize that or regiment that in a way, not that it's oppressive, but as a way to alleviate any concerns from the residents and those coming in, we can kind of maybe start that process of people getting comfortable with life.
I can relate to you that Roost had developed a draft of a letter that is under consideration by both the mayor and the supervisor. We would both be signing it or participating in it. It was, as it stands right now, it's directed to second homeowners, welcoming them back to the area when the time is right. And then it goes on to be a little bit more specific about those second homeowners who are also renting, doing short-term vacation rentals. I don't think the letter is in a form yet that either Jay or I would be comfortable signing it, but ultimately I think we will agree on something. We've also indicated to them that because we really don't have a mailing list of these people, but what we do have that I learned about from Mindy and the gals downstairs is that we can isolate mail by zip code. So we could we could put this letter in all non-local zip code letters that are being mailed out. The theory being that the majority of those are property owners who don't live here year-round, or they're seasonal in some form. I think we just have to come up with a message that both Jay and I feel comfortable with. Remember that Roost approached this a while ago with the concept that our efforts to, back in the beginning of this whole process, of not wanting people traveling here, not wanting vacation rental home people here, was creating a negative atmosphere. So we didn't do anything with that one. We felt at the time that it had come about because local foundations were indicating that fundraising efforts were dropping off significantly, which would be a problem for all of us. But we didn't feel that linked up in a way that we were comfortable participating in it. I do think that we'll come up with a way of welcoming back our second homeowners, obviously, but also the process that we have to work through with Roost is, and I think that's the first part, the local kickstart, is getting people comfortable coming out at all before we start the third phase, which would be bringing people back into the community. So that is getting a lot of attention over at Roost. Jay and I have been looking at it over the last couple of days. And I think we both felt that, with some refinements, that maybe there was something that we could participate in along that line. But
Craig, along those lines that you're talking about, restaurants, hotels, vacation rentals, bed and breakfasts have never been closed down. They've always been allowed to rent.
Mhm.
What are you kickstarting?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as I don't agree, Art, that they have been operating completely. I think the traffic has dried up.
Legally, they could. They've never been closed down. Legally they can. They've never been closed down. Like, we chose not to take anybody here except essential services, but we were never told we couldn't rent our rooms.
That's correct.
I agree that maybe the amount was reduced, but it was never, the hose was never turned off per se.
No.
Is that what you're saying, Art, per se?
Well, like I said, we've never been told we couldn't. And
No.
we just chose to do it on our own. And I know Peter said at the Golden Arrow, they shut down to do renovations. But at some point here, there's no economic stimulus coming to the small guys that I know of. And at some point, the insurance bills, the health insurance bills, they're all still coming in. I'm getting ready to start taking people. There's nowhere they can go and do anything but hike and ride their bikes. And if they want a food, they're just going to have to do pickup like the rest of us, or stay in the room. But I don't see where there's anything other than, the advertising for Roost. I can see not wanting to do that, or the governor. But any thoughts there?
I would think if you're getting calls for summer bookings, that I don't know why you wouldn't take them. I think that the concerns that we have at the moment are that the chapter on social distancing and quarantining hasn't been properly vetted for the lodging industry yet. I think that's a problem. But I don't know, you're absolutely right. No lodging property was shut down at all, nor was the short-term rental industry. Remember, we tried to get the governor to go down that road, and they did not, unlike Vermont next door to us, where they did shut down, but now they're reopened. So I think our leadership at the state levels, it's interesting to me that they all have a slightly different plan. God only knows, but let's hope they all work. But I think in our case,
No, sorry, man, go ahead.
I think the issues that the lodging industry is dealing with are that our normal event type lodgings are pretty much either not happening or they're getting postponed, and that's creating issues for us. And I think in discussions with Jim McKenna's people, they're very hopeful that the rubber tire traffic attracts visitors back to this area this summer, recognizing that they may not be as willing to get on a plane and fly someplace.
Or a cruise.
Just to go, so I guess, just to go back to my original point. So that's where the feedback I've received is that the majority of the people I've run into in feedback, when they see a New Jersey plate, a Connecticut plate, there's shaking of heads, and there is what are you doing here? Now and that's where, like, the testing component, I was hoping that Adirondack Health and Roost, and I know that the local government, being the town village, are limited but somehow we can partner to mitigate or minimize the anxiety of the locals, because I think a local kickstart will help maybe retail and food establishments, but it doesn't help lodging properties. So we're going to eventually have to invite people in, and to minimize that sort of, what are you doing here? As long as they feel like they're being safe, if there's sort of an avenue of being tested, I think that's where I was hoping that MJ was still going to be on the line, that Roost and through McKenna and the organization, that for us in particular, it's a little bit different for Wilmington, and it's a lot different for Willsboro. So we are the hub of Essex County. We are the heart of Essex County. Essex County needs us, and our businesses need us. But it's just that sort of, how do we make people feel calm and safe? And I know, Chief, you mentioned PPE, and that's another aspect. I have some ideas, but I was hoping that maybe, Mayor, that you do speak with Jim McKenna often, and the supervisor, that somehow we can facilitate something if possible for that, so that Art doesn't have to go under. Peter, well, he's 1%, he'll never go under, but at least he doesn't cry that like the money's being taken out of his pocket. Like we can actually help all businesses, and not just retail and the food businesses.
Well, certainly part of the local kickstart has got to be, which is largely focused on our own residents, is getting them back. I know I took a phone call a day or so ago from a lady who had been called by her employer to come back to work. It was a lodging property. And she said to me, she said, Mayor, how would I know if it's safe for me to return to work? And I said, well, if your employer is telling you to come back on May 15th, you're certainly well within your right to inquire of the employer what they are doing to address your personal safety and health, assuming you return to work. On the other hand, I suspect, and we could anticipate this given the type of unemployment benefit that's out there for some of the people that are getting it, is that they would like to keep that going until it comes to an end at the end of July. It's a little bit of a windfall in some ways. It may discourage some people from wanting to get back too soon. But I thought the question was legitimate, and I think anybody that's being called back to work certainly has the right to ask that the conditions of their employment are going to provide a safe employment. Peter, you're dealing with that. You will deal with that situation, I'm sure.
Sure, you got to make everybody feel comfortable, employees and guests. Goes without saying.
I think when you look at the restaurants and the dining rooms, which are going to be, I mean, they're the ones where the local community is liable to begin to become in contact with them again. I mean, I don't think that I would go into a dining room if I didn't see face masks and gloves. Even though I've done it for 77 years and I've survived, but all of a sudden, what's being referred to as the new norm.
Yeah.
We're all trying to
get. What do gloves do when you mention that? Gloves are really for your protection, not the public's, correct? I mean, the minute you put a glove on, you touch something that's COVID-19, now you're spreading it. So it's really only protecting you. So when you say you go to a restaurant, I mean, there's so much misconception out there. And do we all have to wear masks anytime we're in public, or only when we can't maintain the 6-foot distance?
My understanding is social distancing is the trigger that requires it. On the other hand, we're beginning to see more and more, and there's confusion about that. You could be in a grocery store. Some stores are making you wear a mask. Others are just telling you to keep your distance.
Well, and the governor said whenever you go outdoors, you have to have a mask. And then he says when you can't maintain it, like there's a lot of confusion there, I'll say.
Ambiguity.
Yeah.
And how you can go out to dinner and with a face mask on? It's kind of hard to eat.
Well, then it comes down to the waiters have to wear them, but if you're 6 feet from the next party over, your party doesn't have to wear them. I can see that.
Well, I've seen photos from the 1918 pandemic where there's college football games where there's stadiums of people just wearing masks, churches where people are attending wearing masks. At that stage, it's just going to be a phase that we're going to be going through. It's just how to. I just circle back to look at the locals first. Let's make sure they're feeling comfortable, because they will be the key to opening their arms to everyone else. And that's just how that's how I view it.
I think your point is well taken, and certainly as we continue to work with Bruce and MJ and Catherine and Jim, I think we ought to make that point and make it strong that, you know, a lot of our whole industry depends upon how well we welcome people, and I think they know that. But, we didn't hear a lot about that. So we're gonna obviously that's going to continue. I mean, I think Bruce is doing the best job that they can of kind of shepherding. When Greg came up with this idea yesterday, and that's just how new the idea is, I kind of took a deep breath and said, wow, you know, maybe this will work, but I don't think we would want to go down that road unless it was really going to be helpful to the whole effort of bringing our community back out and doing it in a way.
It has to be done right, and it has to be done well, for sure. But it has a lot of potential.
So it's going to take some time. It's going to take all of our attention in terms of this organization to make it work, because the bulk of making it work is going to be on the backs of the village.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is going to be getting the community comfortable with something that is new and very different.
Mm-hmm.
Craig, I know you mentioned you wanted to get done by 5 to 10, the town meeting. Do you want me to quickly just give an update on the Land Code Steering Committee?
Yes, I think that would be a good piece to cover.
Okay, we've met 3 times, not all as a group. And basically, the first one was just Emily, myself, and Dean. And that was just trying to organize where we were going. And then we got into our second meeting and we brought in the rest of the committee. And it became very apparent very quickly that Mike Orticelli would like to have things that he's dealing with day in and day out that are problems, so that he can have those adjusted and fixed. So I think we're going to go to that first, and that'll probably take us a few months. And then at that point, we'll start to move into the other issues, if not simultaneously. We're really thinking that we'll start to get into the vacation rentals towards the latter part of this year. And it's a good thing, in our opinion, because of the fact that we'll have the registration in place by then. We'll know who the people are that are vacation rentals, where they are, when they rent, if they're hosted. And another issue that's come up is Dan Kelleher, whether he be just a Main Street participant or whether he represent as a liaison from the APA. If he is just Main Street, we're under the impression it's going to take 3 months for him to be properly vetted, according to Dean, before he knows what he can and can't do through the APA. And if he is a liaison, he could start immediately. Plus, he brings in all their lawyers and all their know-how. So that's a decision that we'll have to make at some point. And I do have a list of the people that are on the board. And by the way, Liz Clark was a great addition. She's already made some really good suggestions and steered us in a good direction. And I have a list of the people that are on the board, and I have a list of the direction we're headed in. And I'll get that to you so you can get it out to the rest of the board.
I think that would be good. And the idea that you're going to have to hold on the vacation rentals is not surprising, because we just pushed, you know, with the applications moving over to host compliance, we're going to be all the way to August before we have any real.
Yes.
And I don't think we'll have 100% of the applications by August 1st. I think they're going to trickle. They'll trickle in beyond that. But overall, you've got some real talent on that board, and I have no doubt that we'll get the job done.
Well, we've been meeting every week, so it's not like we're letting this go. And every week you've got homework, so I think things are going to happen quickly.
I was aware of the fact that Mike had some specific day-to-day troubles with that code. Billy Hurley talks to me regularly about some of that stuff. And Billy's primary concern was that there was more that needed to be done than just housekeeping items. And I said, Bill, this village board and the town board have been literally on the war front for the last 2 years with our community, and our community's been demanding some changes. And I said, we're moving in a direction that will let those eventually happen. I'm not surprised to hear that it will take them a little bit of time to get that piece done. I suspect some of the day-to-day stuff that Mike is dealing with really is the stuff that's not going to take so long to correct. But hopefully things that can be brought to the two boards so that we can get them fixed now, rather than waiting until we got the 100% of the job, would make a lot of sense. And I think we would all agree to that.
Yeah, like you just said, the whole idea here is there are things like, can an Exler building have an antenna on it? You know, things that aren't real deep issues, but they're issues that come up in his day-to-day job to make his job very difficult. And as you said, if we can come up with a list of this, get them out of the way quickly, let the two boards vote on them, he can go about his work, and then we can move into the rest of this.
Yeah, because Mike very clearly indicated, you know, his interest is in dealing with the things that he's got to work with every day. He made the statement, he doesn't have the time to get into a more in-depth esoteric review of the land use code, but the community itself is looking for that type of objective. And I think if we can demonstrate, I think we can accomplish what we all think needs to happen here.
I agree. And I think if we get the things that he needs out of the way, it'll help him to focus on, like you say, what we in the community want. And I think at that point also, maybe 2-3 months from now might be the time we bring in a professional and we have good ideas where we want to go and bring them in the beginning.
Well, it's a group that we have high expectations for, but we know that they have the ability. You've got good people. So with that said, unless there's something that one of you wants to bring up in particular, I do have a few more minutes. The town is going to take this room over for their regular board meeting at 6.
You did mention the SCADA system on the worksheet, but we didn't talk about it that I heard. Was there anything important there?
I can't really bring you up to date on that without Brad.
Okay, another time.
I just don't want it to fall out of sight because it's critical.
Okay. I'm good.
Let me see what I had. A couple of things I will bring up. The budget is underway. Mindy has done a really nice job so far. She's worked with the department heads. We've got she's got a list of capital items. I did meet in the last few days. I've met with Brad and Mindy. I've met with Bill, and we've looked at those aspects of the budget. It will now come over, and we'll start to work on it as a board. And frankly, this is the first time that I've had it handed to me this early. So I'm almost not feeling like, holy smokes, where did this come from? At the same time, she did finish up and she filed the AUD report for the last fiscal year, last July. I have a copy in my office, and at this point, it's a public report. So I'll ask her, if you haven't all received it, I'll ask her if she can send it to you. It's a lengthy document. Talked about testing a little bit and testing all. Was interesting that Monday Roost held one of its community calls that went out to all its members, regardless of where they're serving, whether it's Upper Lake or Saranac Lake or Skroom Lake or even Hamilton County. But on May 11th, they set their system up to manage 300 calls. And there were people that called in that couldn't get in. They had more than 300 callers on Monday's call-in. So they're getting people are paying a lot of attention to what Roost is doing, and I expect that will only grow. I had a call from Jim Williams. He's looking to set up what would be community drive-in movie opportunities. He's looking for a site here in Lake Placid. We discussed a couple of possibilities. One was the Hannaford parking lot or a portion of it. Another was the municipal lot in front of the town post office. And this would just be a temporary thing while we're in the situation we're in where there's nobody around. Those parking lots are absolutely empty. So I don't know that he'll come back on the municipal lot, but if he does, at least you'll be aware that there was some interest in that. On June 12th, this is kind of a fun thing. Every year the graduating class does sort of a, Jason knows this, does sort of a drive around the village. I think they go around Mirror Lake and up Main Street. There's always a lot of hoopla and horns blowing, and it's just kind of a fun, let yourself loose a little bit for the seniors. And they're actually this year, it's being organized a little bit more. We will engage and probably support it with some of our public vehicles, police cars, fire stuff. We've also been doing some birthday drive-bys. Those have become fairly popular. And that's a huge credit to our fire department and our volunteers who are the ones that mostly come out and support that. But I did do Ruth Hart's a week ago Sunday, and I thought that was just kind of a neat, different thing. There's so little we can do to acknowledge people as a community right now. So we're working on that. I've gotten copies. You all recall that Roost is asking us to extend the International Children's Game temporary loan that we advanced to them. I have the documentation. I've reviewed it with Mindy. I'm working with Janet. I believe that, and I've contacted John Hutlinger, who does most of their financial work, and given him a list of things. I believe that they will be coming back to us with a request for a similar loan for the coming year. Before we do that, we'll have all of their up-to-date budgets and audits, and we'll know what our source of repayment is before we proceed. But my instincts are, at the moment, are, and I've suggested to Jim, that what we're going to expect is that on May 20th, which is the date the note is due, they will write a check for the loan, which includes the principal and interest, and presumably we will have accommodated their requests for additional financing, which until it comes to the board, they don't have. But I don't see anything wrong with the concept of what they're asking us to do. They want to use some of that money to pay for some of the additional programming that they're putting into restoring Lake Placid's economy. That certainly fits well within the scope of the funding program that we've been operating under, God, for 30 years now, I guess. So there'll be more on that. I haven't received the stuff from John, but he did acknowledge that he would be getting it to us. So we'll see where that goes. I think that's pretty much, and I did get a sense from all of you that you would all encourage the village encouraging all of its employees to get tested.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Billy already, his officers have been in situations where they've had to be tested. But I think it would help us in getting our people back on a normal work schedule. You heard Brad say that he's going to bring the crew that he's been holding off every other week. They're going to, as of Monday, they're all going to be back on board. The plan is that we will separate them into different work sites so that the risk of cross-contamination is minimized as much as possible. An important part of this is going to be the face masks. And frankly, I've already had a couple people in the community say to me, you know, I saw a couple of your men, they didn't have a mask on. And I said, well, unless they can't maintain a 6-foot distance, it's not clear to me that you have to wear a mask all the time. But if you're going to be in a setting where you're meeting with the public, or you can't maintain social distancing, then you must wear a mask. And at the moment, Art, I agree that this is all kind of ambiguous. And what I'm a little disappointed in is the CDC apparently has written directives for various types of businesses. And unfortunately, they're not distributing them.
Can you not ask the county to give us a directive, which they will get from the state, as far as when masks are required and when they are not, so that we can put that out so we know we're not violating rules?
I can try that. I was where I did work with Dan Palmer last Friday. The last thing Dan did before he left his office was to email me and tell me that we have to stay on the course that we're on right now. But he indicated at least until the 15th, 14th. So I think you're seeing, in my mind, if construction sites can reopen for work and they're considered essential, and municipal workers are considered essential workers, the standards for a construction site wouldn't be any different than they would be for my highway worker out sweeping sand. At least that's.
One last question there. If the county is in touch with the governor, it'd be interesting to find out where he found a barber shop that was legal to be open. I noticed he had his hair cut 3 days ago.
Yeah.
He's no longer one of us.
I got my hair cut the other day at home, Art, and I was very nervous.
He didn't look like his was cut at home.
No.
I received a haircut at home as well, and I've been cutting my own son's hair. I think I've done a pretty good job.
Looks good, Jason.
My stepson colored his wife's hair, and I'm going like, you what? He said, yeah.
Throw it on YouTube. Watch it.
Yeah,
do it.
I did it. We're all doing things that we're not used to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all that I had at the moment that I jotted down here. Obviously, one of the reasons that I'm doing at least a rough outline agenda is that these work sessions are basically taped and they're public. So I had a comment. I heard a comment from somebody the other day that indicated that they were encouraging people to go to the village YouTube site, that there was a lot of information coming out of our village board meetings that they didn't know about. I'm going like, well, that's because we were hitting over 100 people on YouTube last week.
Wow, that's great.
So the word is getting out better than it is when we're under normal conditions, but I would much rather have all you guys right here at the table. It's just easier. But we're all learning technology, and I think we'll probably continue to, even if we are all in the same room, I think we'll probably continue to put our meetings out and publish them. There's no reason to.
Hey, Craig, Jay's going to have everybody there tonight at the table, 6 feet apart.
Yes.
We can do the same.
Most of his councilmen are, again, there's room enough. We can have up to 10 people spread out in this room. At least that's my interpretation of the regulation.
Well, if we all got ourselves tested tomorrow, at least that would be a good start towards being in the same room.
It would be a very good start. Yep.
I'm going, so.
How do we sign up then? Is that something that we do through the village or independently?
The instructions.
Our principal there's a phone number within the email, and you call this phone number, and they say they don't assign a time, they simply verify it for information. So you can then, just as long as they know who you are, then you just show up. Then you can, as long as you're on.
You guys want it right now?
I have the number.
Jason, can you forward that email to us?
Sure. Is
yes.
it the same, Mayor? Is it 518-897-2462?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll forward the email to all of you.
Okay.
And also the email itself had the site as being at the elementary school, but then there was a follow-up map that puts it at the horse show grounds.
Yes.
So it's between 11 and 3 tomorrow.
Hmm.
Okay.
Great.
If there's nothing else, I'll turn this over to Jay and let them go.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, gentlemen.
Good night.
I'll be glad when we're all back together.
Yeah, you too. See you, Art.
Good night.
Good night, guys. I think I'm going to let Anita come down because she may just switch this over for Jay. So, yeah, that's right. So where's the record button here?
See the, yeah.